endangered species issues for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of heartbreaking things in those times. I've seen a lot of animals killed that shouldn't have been killed, a lot of special places that got logged and mined that shouldn't have been mined. But the killing of Macho bee is really one of the most devastating and depressing things that I've encountered in my career, because it was just so senseless and so predictable. But also, because it's not the first time this has happened. This is actually the third time the last jaguar in the United States was killed. In 1971, the jaguar was shot outside of Dallas. And if you go back and you read the newspapers, look at what was said. There was this terrible lament about the last jaguar and these terrible feelings. But it didn't lead to anyone saying, make sure it doesn't ever happen again. In fact, it was just a few years later, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service took the jaguar off the endangered species list and said there are no jaguars in the U.S. because it was killed. So they used the death of that jaguar as an excuse to stop conservation rather than to start doing the right thing. And almost as if to prove the Fish and Wildlife Service wrong, just a few years later, poachers killed the jaguar in the Dos Cabezas in 1986. So clearly there were jaguars here. There was a lot of lamenting and hand-wringing about that jaguar being dead, the last jaguar in the U.S. But again, it didn't lead to any conservation action. It didn't lead the Fish and Wildlife Service to say, better put the jaguar back on the endangered species list. Better develop a recovery plan. Better reintroduce the species to the U.S. Instead, it was an excuse again to do nothing. So eventually, the center sued the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we got the endangered species put on to the endangered species list in 1997. That gave them a legal requirement to develop a recovery, to map out the most important jaguar habitat areas and protect them. But rather than do that, the agency buried its head in the sand, and under intense pressure from Arizona Game and Fish, the agency which is responsible for the capture and killing of this very jaguar, under intense pressure from them, they chose, again, not to do a recovery plan. We sued the agency for doing that, and in 2008, they put out their official explanation of why they're not doing a recovery plan for the jaguar. And here's what they said. We only have to do a recovery plan for species whose historical and current range includes the United States. And we declare that neither the historical nor the current range of the jaguar occurs in the United States, which is just insanely cynical and laughable. We know historically the jaguar occurred from Monterey Bay to the Appalachians. Numerous records of jaguars breeding, hunting, and being encountered all over the southern tier of the United States. In fact, the federal government had a campaign to exterminate them. And now they're asserting they were just never there. Then, after going on to explain how jaguar conservation plans in Central America and South America are all failing, and if the species stays on its current trajectory of those plans will go extinct, they declare, and we don't need to do conservation in the U.S. because we should just follow those failing plans in other countries. So we have had a 30-year systematic failure to commit to jaguar recovery on behalf of the state and the federal agency. So this time, when the last jaguar has been killed in America, I want to make it the very last time the last jaguar is killed. Yeah.